Eamon, I just wanted to ask a quick one on England and their situation at the moment, and actually how it relates to Ireland in one sense. I think at the moment, when England are bringing through such an enormous amount of players and they're technically skillful and there's a lot of competition for places, I myself, for example, would come from a mixed heritage background. So some people see themselves as both English and Irish. Now, I do wonder if there's an opportunity for the FAI to start putting the kind of feelers out there for players like, say, Conor Gallagher at Chelsea, who was on loan at West Brom last season. These kind of players who might not have a run at the England team, and Ireland benefit from it if Stephen Kenny was able to do so.
Yes, I think Stephen Kenny is different to the last two managers, Martin O'Neill and Trapattoni. I think Stephen knows where all the Irish players are. He knows who they are. He knows where they are. He knows their history in schoolboy football, or he knows their history in the academies at the clubs they're at. So he knows everything because he managed the under-21 team, and he takes, he's living here, so he takes great interest in it. The problem, we had Declan Rice. We had him. And he saw, he got involved in John Walters and Harry Arthur and Roy Keane got involved in a fight on the training ground. Declan Rice was watching it. He was standing there watching it. And Keane was abusing the two players. So Rice said, that's it. Now, we could have played Declan Rice at any stage and made him our player. And we didn't. That's down to O'Neill and Keane. Jack Grealish, we were negotiating with him and his father. Now, he may never have been going to come, but Keane said of his father that he was high maintenance. Now, we have these players, but to go back to your general point, Kieran, I mean, basically, we do need to look at what the English are doing right the way through their system. And I think we need, and that's why I like Stephen Kenny being manager, we need a relationship between our under-21s, our underage teams, and the senior team. And also, there's a huge issue about whether our best schoolboy players should go to the top Premier League clubs if they're asked, or whether they should go perhaps to the Bundesliga, perhaps to the Netherlands, perhaps to the Championship, because when the Premier League clubs need a player, they don't promote from within, they go out and sign a check. And that is hurting, it seems to be hurting us a bit. Now, the question that I don't know the answer to is how come England is producing so many gifted young players? Mason Mount, Sancho, and Grealish. So there's something happening in England because this is the first generation that's produced so many gifted attacking players. I think, it's since Gerrard, Lampard, Paul Scholes, since that generation. So there was a big gap there. And I don't know the answer to that. But I think you're right to identify it as an important issue, an important question.
It's a very fair point, and certainly something Stephen Kenny touched on last night, chatting to Nathan Murphy on Off the Ball about, an Irish team that reflects Irish society, and you have young black players like Chiedozie Ogbene, the first African born to play for Ireland, how important that is. And I suppose touching on all of that, Eamon, like when you look at a team like Denmark, you've mentioned, like Denmark didn't qualify for the last Euros, we were there,
yeah.
And yet their population is I think around 5.86 million, fairly similar to ours, and yet they are streets ahead of us, it would appear, at this moment in time, because they look, by all accounts, if they beat the Czechs, they're into a Euros semi-final, and who knows where this will take it. Like, is that frustrating from your point of view to see the Irish team so far behind a country of Denmark's similar size?
Well, one thing we have to look at is the fact that we drew with Denmark twice in recent, within the past, year, 18 months. We went to Hungary and we drew with, about 8 or 9 players missing. We only lost to Slovakia on penalties, and they were at this tournament. I think we have to be fair to ourselves. We could have been at this tournament and we could have been competitive if Stephen Kenny had been the manager for the last 3 or 4 years. I think what he's doing now will pay dividends in the next 2 years. Not in time to qualify us for the World Cup, but for the next European Championship, I expect Ireland to qualify. I expect Troy Parrott, Adam Ida, Aaron Connolly, and those players to come through and have an impact. Well, that's my hope. And I think that Stephen understands what Ireland needs to do. And I think the problem with having Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane, and Tardelli and Trapattoni, they fly in for the senior team plays, and then they're gone. We need someone who's here and paying attention all the time. And that's what we have now.
And just on that Stephen Kenny interview last night that I mentioned with Nathan, like, he spoke about the fact that he's sticking to his guns, sticking with his style of football, and talking about players like Darragh O'Shea, who I don't know how many caps he has, maybe 9 or 10 caps at this point in time, but by the next Euro qualifier tournament in Germany, you know, if he plays our World Cup qualifiers upcoming, he'll have, you know, 15, 16 caps by the stage that tournament comes around. So all of a sudden you're looking at all these young guys who have experience. So do you back Stephen Kenny in terms of A, his style of play, and B, giving all these young players a good opportunity?
Yes, I do. I do certainly back in terms of blooding these young players into international football. I also like the style of play. I mean, nobody's playing that agricultural stuff that we used to play in this championship. Although there was the Germans and indeed England, they did knock quite a few balls forward, and second balls, getting on the second balls, which is the theory, was a factor. I think your style of play largely depends on the players you have, but there's no reason why you should be doing stupid things, giving the ball away all the time, as we did under O'Neill and under Trapattoni. We worked hard to get the ball back, then we gave it straight back to our opponents. I don't think Stephen's teams will do that. I don't think they should do that. And I think he's right about that.
Eamon, I think you've been one of the most vocal people in Ireland when it comes to the style of play and managers almost putting the Irish players down and what they can do. And what do you think this is make or break now for Ireland? Do you think Stephen Kenny will get the patience of the country, patience of the FAI to actually build something here? Because it doesn't happen overnight. After spending 40 years playing this type of football, do you think he will be allowed the time to change the ideals of Irish football?
Yes, I do. I hope he will. I think we have to be realistic. We play Portugal in September, I think, in the World Cup qualifiers. Now, everybody was saying, how can we play Portugal? Portugal weren't very good in this championship. They really weren't. And they have a lot of players who are cracking on. Ronaldo's 36, Coutinho's 35, and one or two of the others, big name players, Fernandes, for example, didn't play well. So we've got to get that idea out of our head that we can't compete with Portugal. We can't. So we can't be going there with a defeatist attitude. But I don't think qualifying for the World Cup is necessarily a realistic goal. Qualifying for the next European Championship, building a good team with the young players that are available. And Darragh O'Shea is a good example. You know, he played really, really well in an unsettled defence. Building that team, having the patience and having the guts that Stephen Kenny has to play young players, to not want a result every time they go out on the pitch. Just remember Troy Parrott and that vital goal that he scored for us. Well, he scored 2 goals, but the first goal was so important. He showed talent, he showed courage, he showed persistence, and it paid off. We want that kind of attitude, and I think you've got to build that, and you've got to build a group of players, a team. I referenced Southgate before in this regard. He has a team of guys that get on with each other. They all know what their role is, and they go out and they do their business. So I think I'd be optimistic that we will have a decent team over the next 12 to 18 months.